Hey everybody, welcome in to another edition of Make Every Second Count Live with me, your host and international award-winning Make Every Second Count speaker. Now, I am very excited about tonight, and I ask you if you would please share this out, tag some people in the comments, however you can make people watch, go for it. And don't forget to hit that like button, give us some reactions. So, hearts, cry faces, angry faces, whatever. Just give us something to help us trick the algorithm on Facebook. So, with no further ado, we're going to be teaching you how you can create order out of the chaos of your life with Shane. Hi, Shane. How are you tonight?
Not too bad. How are you doing tonight?
Oh, I am fantastic, man. I'm glad to have you on here this evening. And I hope that people out there can learn as much as I will about you, your story, and your strategies towards life. So, if you would like to go ahead and tell everybody a little bit about yourself, like who you are, where you're from, what you do, and more importantly, why you do what you do, I'm going to be inviting some people on my phone.
Hey everyone, my name is Shane Thrapp. I'm an ADHD life coach. I help people through my business create an order from chaos to kind of like figure out their life with ADHD, what that means for them, and how to communicate that with others and build an environment of support and positivity around themselves. I help run one of the largest men's ADHD support groups on Facebook, literally men's ADHD support group. And I'm also a member of the board of the Inattentive ADHD Coalition, a national nonprofit here in the United States.
Wow.
I got into this because I got diagnosed late in life with ADHD. I felt like my life was completely nuts up until that point, and I wanted to be able to help people. And I got to a point in my life where my body just decided to shut down, and so I needed something where I could run my own life my own way. And so, what better way to do that than join the 300%, the 3,005 million people out there with ADHD who decide to open up their own businesses. And so that's where I'm at. I'm an entrepreneur. I help multiple different companies work through their own situations as well as run my own.
That is amazing, man. Has it been hard to start your own company and remain focused in that? Because I know companies can be difficult even for people without ADHD. So if you can explain a little bit about that for a minute and help me understand and help other people understand.
Yeah. So I've always been that person with ADHD who overstretches themselves, that overwhelms themselves with too many different things. And, it's actually one of the reasons why I was a project manager in my past life. And because I wanted to be able to create this order out of all the chaotic things that was going on in my world. And so when I decided to open up, my business, I wanted to do it more along the lines of I wanted to help people. It really wasn't about the money. And then the more that I kept putting myself out there, the more that I kept reaching and helping people, the more opportunities I was being given to help other people and to help them with their businesses and to help them, figure out their plans and their different types of projects that they wanted to expand on. And I just started enjoying it. I've always had a passion for social media, so I help with moderation and social media awareness about through the Men's ADHD Support Group. I'm helping this doing the same thing for the Inattentive ADHD Coalition. I just enjoy this stuff, man, and that's actually kind of the reason why I can do it is my ADHD. Um, I learned early on how to say no to people and how to like be able to be aware of my capabilities and what I'm actually able to do, but also learned how to say no and to rest when my body says, "Hey, you're being burnt out. whenever you're really distracted or having a hard time, getting up out of bed every day or things of that nature. Sometimes your body just needs to rest, and I learned early on how to recognize that, and so I take care of myself. And because I take care of myself doing the different techniques that are out there as far as mindfulness and things like that, I'm able to still be productive and still be a part of a network of people helping others with ADHD and through life itself.
That is phenomenal, man. So I have a sense. Well, all right. First of all, we're going to answer a little question here that isn't coming from the audience, but it is coming from me because I'm curious if everybody out there knows what ADHD is. So, can you explain what ADHD stands for so I'm not the only person that might not know?
So ADHD stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. Um, which is probably one of the dumbest names for a disorder that there possibly could be. I love Dr. William Dodson. He's one of the foremost doctors that talk about ADHD, and it's not that we have a deficit of attention; it is that we pay attention to too many things. Our brain doesn't have the same structure as other people's brains. And so when we are trying to pay a lot of attention to the one thing we want, our brain is saying, however, did you know that all of these other things are also important and may or may not be related to the one thing you're trying to pay attention to? And so that's kind of what happens with our brains. And so we when we talk about that, that's what it stands for, but it's not really a great name for it.
So, attention hyperactive disorder.
Attention deficit hyperactive disorder.
Sorry,
It's okay.
I missed that one word. I missed that one word. So, we have some people in the comments here. We have Christy Henniger that's watching. We have Jody Roberts. We have Sherry Lynn Clark, Adam Mark Robinson, Ben Bruce Chris Jr., my dad, Jeff Marconette Sr., Brenda Ringwood, Jeff Grimes, and that looks like it so far. But I thank you guys so much for watching with us. You can ask as many questions as you would like. I will make sure I get them answered. If I don't while I'm on the air, we will do it after, but I will get them answered for you. So I happen to know from my own experience of being in a car wreck that nearly ended my life, and I had to start over at the age of 17. I was in a coma 2.5 months and in the hospital 3.5 months. Now, I noticed something when I got back to life, as most people consider it, that people show all kinds of things on social media, and those things are not actual life. So I'd like to show everyone that people out there, no matter what they do, no matter who they are, no matter how they started, we all experience things that are hard to go through. So have you experienced things that are hard to go through? Now, I know with your ADHD that it's probably more difficult, and you have things on your hands right now to help you focus. And what are some of the things that you have had to really grow through in order to get through what you're going through?
You know, you see those memes all the time, right? Where it says, give you $10 million or go back in time to fix all your mistakes, right? I love those because whenever I sit here and think about my life, I'm like, give me the $10 million. And a lot of people are like, well, don't you want to fix the mistakes you made? Well, no, because that's how I got to where I am. All of the mistakes and things like that I've made throughout my life are what got me into the position where I have my wife and my kids. And that I wouldn't give those up for the world. I
How
wouldn't
old
even,
are your kids?
I've got a 19-year-old, a 16-year-old, and two twin toddlers.
And two twin toddlers.
Yeah.
Wow. That's really stepping out of your comfort zone there.
Yeah. But here's the thing. I got here because I grew up in Northeast Texas, and my dad was an alcoholic and he was abusive. And I struggled because I had ADHD and I'm on the spectrum, right? In a society that really doesn't understand it. My mom was a part of a fundamental religious church who believed that mental illness and ADHD and autism were demon possessions. And so I dealt with a lot of that. I struggled in school, like a lot of people with ADHD do, but mostly because of social situations. I didn't really get that aspect of the life, but I did really good education wise, except for math. But then like the big struggle for me was going through once I got out of high school and being homeless and addicted to drugs and not having any direction in my life and no structure, which made me fall into a relationship that was really abusive.
Yeah,
All of
that
that really
that I'm
struggles.
just posting a comment here. Sorry. Didn't mean to pull your attention away.
No, it's not a problem. But like when you have ADHD, there's a lot of struggles that you go through because if it's not diagnosed, it's really hard to figure out. It's really hard to figure out why you're failing so much. And everybody wants to point out that it is you failing, it is your fault that you're failing. But the thing is when it's ADHD, when it's undiagnosed and when it's untreated, there's a lot of things that in our world, neurotypical society, doesn't really help you at all and in fact hurts you. And so that struggle in its own has been what I've had to get through.
So, can you explain the neurotypical society?
So people with ADHD or who are on the autism spectrum and or deal with some sort of mental illness, such as like depression, bipolar disorder, things of that nature, they don't fit into the neurotypical mold. Their brain chemistry is different. Our brain's structure is different in the case of ADHD and autism, and so we think differently than the large majority. And when I say large majority, I would say probably 75% of our world have a fairly typical brain function, right? The way it functions. But with people with ADHD or on the autism spectrum, their brains are differently structured. There's differences in sizes, noticeable difference in sizes, and the way that our brain communicates with the different areas of our brain, it's all just a little tweaked. And so we have to struggle through, when we say neurotypical, the average layman who lives out there in the world who is able to function on a certain level. They have fairly decent executive function skills. They have the ability to have a decent reward system, things of that nature. And we have to figure out how to fit into that society with a brain that thinks differently and works differently.
Wow, wow. So, people out there, you're saying that a lot of people are neurotypical, but you're saying that your own brain isn't the typical brain. So, I'm trying to make sure I get this right.
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. Um, it so has there been anything that has helped you in in your journey of life? I mean, helped you focus, like there's things on your hand.
You know, a lot of it just actually boils down to accepting myself, who I am, right? That means accepting that I have ADHD, accepting that I have high functioning autism, accepting who I am, right? But not only accepting who I am, but also being able to then start putting tools in my life to allow me to function at a decent level. So working with a psychiatrist to figure out what all I had to deal with, working with a therapist to deal with the trauma and PTSD that I have throughout my life. Like being able to then start learning the life skills that, you know, that we didn't get as teenagers or in young adulthood, where I understand how to use fidget rings so that I can pay attention to what a person is asking me and stay focused on a conversation. And like how to use a calendar, how to make sure I'm putting people's stuff in my calendar so that I don't miss the podcast that I'm scheduled to be on, or miss that I need to make sure I send in the information that they need for me and things of that nature, which means like having alarms and set up and things like that.
You were
The,
very good about that with me, though.
I hope so, because I made like 3 alarms to make sure I contacted you. But nobody with ADHD when they're first starting out want to hear that, because that's what a lot of neurotypical people say. Like, oh, just use a calendar. Well, here's the thing. ADHD affects our brains in a way that is fundamentally different than a person who is like neurotypical. Like it affects the who, what, when, where, why, and how of everything about us. And so for us to understand the how, we have to have things explicitly explained to us, right? We need to understand how to use a calendar in a way that works for us. Like, what kind of calendar do I need to use? When do I put things into it? Why should I use a calendar? Right? So we have to understand these things at a level that we can get, and it has to be a tool that we can use. So like that's the difficult part of being with having ADHD, is because each one of us has to have a different structure, right? But we all have to have structure. If we don't, we flail around and we're frustrated all the time and we're angry all the time because we can't get our shit together. And so that's what I've learned over 40 years, is how to put in place those tools that work for me. And now as an ADHD life coach, I help others build that same system for themselves based on what they need. Do they need digital? Do they need analog? Do they need to write things down? Do they need to type things in a computer? That's how I help people.
Yeah. Well, we have a couple questions here
Hmm.
now. Ben Bruce says, Jeff, can you help type the full meaning of ADHD? So I don't know if he just wants the spelling of that, or I don't know what he wants there. Do you?
It sounds like the full thing. If you go to my website, www.creatingorderfromchaos.com, there's a whole section on what is ADHD right there.
All right, that's a great answer. Now we have a weird question here because Adam isn't the neurotypical kind of person. So he says, how does the brain react to AI and neuroscience in your experiences? And can it be channeled and help those suffering with mental health or the range of autistic spectrum? Because I feel we as a society can be stigmatized and not learn the skill to channel such things into positivity. Too many become druggies and criminals or just can't talk responsibly.
Um, so it kind of depends on what you mean by AI. Are we speaking about Elon Musk's system where he wants to implant the AI into our brains and allow us to have like little supercomputers in our brains? Because that sounds terrifying to me, frankly. But whenever we talk about like how does neuroscience help people with ADHD or who are neurodivergent, they help by us helping us recognize that our brains are different, not broken. Here's the thing, we're not broken, we're not damaged, right? We have trauma that has damaged our brains. We have mental illnesses that are comorbidity that causes like harm in our brains, right? But as people with ADHD or who are on autism spectrum, we aren't damaged, right? We talked a little bit differently, we think a little bit differently, but we are creative geniuses. We have the ability to function, and we know that we're not damaged because neuroscience tells us so, right? We know our brains, the prefrontal cortex, the hypothalamus, the amygdala, the limbic system, those are all a little bit smaller or a little bit differently proportioned, but they're not damaged. We are just as intelligent as other people out there. In fact, we actually average to be more intelligent than some people out there. And so we just have to, that's how neuroscience helps us, is understand that we aren't damaged people, that we're just different.
Yeah. All right. So we have another question from Adam. It's going to be a long one. As someone who works with a scientist in Plymouth University, I find there is a lot of studies and help that isn't in public domain. So is that something you see as well?
There, so ADHD is one of the most researched mental issues that are out there. And we know this because there's like thousands and thousands of papers out there. The thing is it's very hard to put in clinical terms the ways that ADHD affects people. Now, we can look at fMRI studies where we can see the different functions of the brain and how different parts fire off when given different impetus. But when we try to measure emotional dysregulation, such as what they tried to do in the 70s, there's not a whole lot of ways where you can sit here and say for certainty when it comes to science, this does XYZ. And that's what science is about. What does the data tell us? Now, when we talk about emotional dysregulation, from person to person to person, their trauma and their background and their memories and the things that have happened to them in the past and the environment that they grew up in are all going to be dramatically different with some similarities, right? The person who was abused by their father has a lot of similarities with another person who was abused by their father, but the person who was sexually abused by their aunts and uncles doesn't have a whole lot similarities to others, but there's some layover. However, how they react to certain situations, certain triggers in their life that makes the emotional dysregulation fire off due to the memory and the trauma, that's different from person to person to person to person, how they react to the situation. And that's not measurable. And so when we talk about the different studies that are out there, the reason why they're not really published a whole lot is because the results are too nebulous to be considered scientifically impactful in the community. And so there just winds up being a lot of them that are posted in academic journals and things of that nature, but not necessarily in the public domain.
Man, you just talk circles around me.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. I hope Adam gained some knowledge from that. He says he's just here to learn and bounce ideas. He's had always a pleasure to be here, and then good explanation, Shane. You are a genius.
I try real hard.
Well, obviously you don't have to try too hard because you just talk circles around me. So
This is 10 years of hyper focus. Thank you.
yeah,
That's what having an ADHD brain does whenever you find that one thing that's super amazing for you.
yeah. Well, I'm glad you found that thing so you could tunnel into it. So he says, "Thanks for clearing that up, bro. We have the same cognitive functions. Even some very intelligent people have ADHD or other things."
Mm-hmm.
And then Ben Bruce said, "This topic is just what we needed to increase our knowledge. Thanks, Jeff and Coach Shane. You are a genius."
Oh, thank you.
So, guys, we appreciate your comments so much. And also, I would like to say hi to Brian, Lady Dotson Matheny, and somebody else. Oh, Tara Cool. So, Taz. Oh, and Travis Crawford is here too. It's good to see you, man. Good to see everybody. We thank you so much for watching, and we ask you if you would please share this video out to invite people to watch it, and make sure you give us some kind of reaction, whatever that may be. A wow face, a laughy face, a caring face, a cry face, or an angry face, or just a heart or a thumbs up. Just help us trick the algorithm on Facebook. So I have to ask Shane, do you have any tips for people that are going through something that they don't think they can handle? Let's say, all right, we know that the COVID lockdown and everything with COVID has been a stressful thing for people. And do you have a way for them to cope with that stress a little better?
So the COVID lockdown really did a lot of things that damaged a lot of people with ADHD. We already have a tendency to isolate ourselves due to imposter syndrome and rejection sensitivity dysphoria, parts of emotional dysregulation. And, having the COVID lockdown really just kind of reinforced that, because now we have a new anxiety and a new fear to use against moving out. But the thing is we have to have those people in our lives. We have to reach out and talk to people and have conversations and and work through the anxieties and the frustrations and stuff like that that dealing with people can give us. Because when we don't, we tend to allow it to push us even further back into our isolation, and that causes a lot of damage to our very symptoms. They get worse. Our cognitive function gets worse. Our life expectancy gets worse. And so when you have ADHD and you're really trying to figure out how to get better, ask your friends, talk to them, open up about what you're dealing with and what you're struggling with, and allow them to be in your life and do your best to be in their lives. We deal with a lot of out of sight, out of mind kind of issues where our memory just doesn't do the right things there. So you have to intentionally put yourself in their lives. You have to set alarms to communicate with your friends, which makes you sound like a shitty friend, but that's how our brains work. We don't think about that kind of stuff. And so even though you really are important to us, sorry, but we need to let them know that, so that they know to reach out to us and talk to us and help us, be their friend, as well as help us with what we're going through. Because we're not going to be the first ones to reach out to you unless we happen to see on your post, hey, you just posted something really awesome and amazing, and I want to talk to you exclusively about that one thing.
Yeah.
So reach out to us and talk to us, and when they do reach out to you, people with ADHD and who are on the spectrum, open up and talk to them and let them know what you're going through. They want to hear, and if they don't, they're not really your friend, and they can peace out.
Yeah. That is fantastic advice, even for the, as you call it, neurotypical people out there, because that is advice that is good for each and every person. To that we need to reach out to those we love. We need to reach out to those, even those frenemies that we have, that we don't necessarily get along with, but we can still be nice to them in passing. We don't have to be like good friends, but you can reach out and support them when they need it, and hopefully they'll do the same when you need it. So, Shane, I have to ask, is there any contact information you would like to give out if anybody wants to reach out to you?
Yeah, you can find me on my website, www.creatingorderfromchaos.com. You can also find me on Facebook at Creating Order from Chaos Coaching. As I said earlier, I run the men's ADHD support group on Facebook with an amazing coach named Mark Almodovar. And, I'm here essentially on any social media outlet as Creating Order from Chaos.
That is fantastic, guys. If you have any questions that you didn't want to ask here in the feed, don't be afraid to reach out to him and ask him. the questions you have, because I know that he is a wealth of knowledge. And as Ben Bruce says, you, my friend, are a genius. So I just need everybody out there, including you, Shane, to do me a favor this week, next week, and then for the rest of your life. I need you to make every second count. Why? Because you never know when the seconds are going to run out on your one life. Guys, we'll see you back here next Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you again so much, Shane. I appreciate you for being here. And you guys have a fantastic evening. Bye.
Bye.